Good morning. Good to see you all. It's that time of year. It's getting chilly, and mostly everything's fallen down already. So it's good to see you here, all snuggly and warm. Are you snuggly? Are you warm? Not quite. Well, lately it seems every time one receives a teaching from a teacher of Buddhism, from a Lama, they talk about degenerate times. And I think for some of us that may be a confusing idea, it may be hard to understand, or it may be an idea that we think we don't agree with. And for the most part, I have to say that Buddhism is not a thoughtless philosophy or religion. It's one that we think about and we consider, and we use our minds to determine and to understand. So it's good for us to understand what the Lamas mean when they talk about these degenerate times. It is said that when Lord Buddha was alive, times were different, that teachings could be heard more succinctly. And in fact, not only was the Buddha himself there to teach, with his extraordinary skillful means and great compassion, and of course, not to mention his great enlightenment, so available, so visible to everyone that heard or saw him. But in that time, there were also better students. It is said that the students that heard the Buddha teach had extraordinary karma, must have gathered a great deal of merit. In fact, I hear that there was even a student or two that actually could memorize his teachings from one week to the other. What a thought. Wow. I can't even imagine what it would be like to ask a student what I taught last week and have it come out straight. Because somehow, during the week, our minds play telephone. Woo! And we just put our own spin on things. And of course, we know that spin runs the world. Just turn on the TV, we can find out. These times are different. It's interesting because it seems that if a student has poor qualities, or, on the other hand, some good capacity, something will ripen very quickly, one way or the other. Maybe at the time of Lord Buddha, it seems as though things were more stretched out. It was an easier energy. There was time, perhaps, to consider the teachings. One's mind was seemingly more relaxed. There was not the modern distractions that we have now, or the modern confusions that we have now, that fill our lives with nonsense. I mean, literally nonsense. We spend so much of our day on nonsense. And so I imagine that at that time things were simple. Simpler at least. You either did something or you didn't. You studied or you didn't. You practiced or you didn't. Perhaps it was different like that. At least that's what they tell me. In this time, the last applicable adjective one could use is relaxed. It certainly is not the case that we are relaxed on the path, able to really engage, able to do away with nonsense. I mean, even those of us who have had the great good fortune to go to New York and to hear His Holiness's precious enlightened mind and his skillful means, still we have the rest of the year to deal with. And that most of the year then is nonsense. I mean, we may do some good, we may do some harm, but we do a lot of nonsense. How beautiful to be able to practice in a place like New York, where His Holiness keeps us going, event after event after event. He keeps you on track. We're like puppies, we got that little leash and we're just led along and yanked whenever we don't do it right, and it's great. because it takes the responsibility off of our shoulders in one sense. If we just commit to practicing that way, we are led as to how to do it. But then there's the rest of the year. And for many of us, the rest of the year is a mixed bag. And for some of us, the rest of the year is kind of lost time. And that's unfortunate. And maybe it's due to what they say, or the degenerate times. I know His Holiness talks about it a lot. He talks about, he's even changed tactics, as a matter of fact. I've known His Holiness for a long time, and he thought differently in the earlier days about what could be shown to students, what could be displayed to students. Some things he would hold closer to him that he gives out more easily now. And recently he has said that basically our big chance, our big opportunity, and the best method that we can use is to practice Guru Yoga very sincerely and very deeply. And so that's our best opportunity. Well, this wasn't the way he talked earlier. And I know from my own personal experience that during the course of a life, as we age and develop and mature, we all change. Maybe our message, even our ordinary message, our capacity to speak as humans probably changes over time. But in his case, I have seen that his message, always relevant to his audience and always relative to the time in which he speaks, because of his immense skill, has indeed changed quite a bit recently, over time. And I myself have found, not that I put myself in any way comparing to him, but I myself have found a different urgency, a different methodology. Of course, it's always Dharma. It will always be Dharma. There's nothing for me but Dharma. Yet, how one delivers Dharma, how one perceives Dharma, how one displays Dharma activity, all these things modulate and are moderated over time. For myself, I have noticed that there's an urgency. It's come to this, there's no more time to waste attitude. And I'm sure His Holiness gets his attitude from his wisdom. I don't know where I get mine from. CNN, I think. The newspaper. None of which I think are actually telling me the truth anymore. But so, yes, these times have changed, and as never before, the term degenerate times really fits. What does it mean? What does it mean? If we could look at reality with different eyes, sort of allowing ordinary perceptions to dissolve, and seeing or perceiving on a deeper, more profound level, maybe with eyes of wisdom rather than eyes of salt water and flesh. Maybe we could describe it this way. We could say that our karmic field, and I mean that individually, collectively, we are a group, we are families, we are people, we are nations, we are a world. And so we have individual and collective karma, meaning that there are cause and effects that are ripening that we ourselves initiated. And sometimes they are very personal and have to do with very intimate details of our life and inward experiences, or how we engage with others. But many times our karma is because of cause and effect relationships that we build with each other. with groups, with families, with sanghas, with nations. And we don't have any way to understand that that kind of cause and effect relationship is actually occurring. It's difficult to understand. We have no way to see that. We might be able to understand if we had an easy and quick ripening, such as you get when you practice the protectors. And they are very skillful in showing you immediately where you made your mistakes. And in some cases we can say, oh, today I was careless, or I was angry, or I needed an attitude adjustment. And then later on in that day you can see the results of that very thing. If one can see cause and result in that way, it's very helpful. Very good to see that. But mostly cause and result tend to take place over a longer period of time. Like, for instance, you may not notice that steps that you took in a group, or in a relationship with a group, or in a relationship with a person years ago, 2-3 years ago, might be ripening now. Because we don't have the kind of mind that connects those dots. We see and react, and we don't know how to think more deeply and understand. It's like trying to view the elephant through the little peephole. We only get to see the little chunk that we're peeping through at. And it looks different to each one of us. We might look at the trunk and think it's a snake, or the tail and think it's a brush, and not know what we're actually looking at, not be able to get the whole picture. And then there's the question of our minds. Our minds are difficult for us to understand because for many reasons, not only past habitual tendency and past karma, but also in this very culture, we are not taught to utilize self-honesty. We are not taught to look within. We are not taught to gauge our aptitudes, our depth, our understanding, our willingness to practice. We simply aren't led like that. This is a materialistic culture, and we're taught, you need that thing to make you happy. You should get that thing. You should go for that goal. If you're a really good person, you're going for that goal 5 years out. That's what all the popular books say. If you really want to be an effective person, plan 5 years out. But it's all out, isn't it? And it's very difficult for us to look within our minds and see, judge how we have deepened, how we have improved, whether or not we are engaging in compassionate activity. Many of us act really surprised at the things our minds do. Like when rage comes up, anger comes up, we're like, freaked out, where did that come from? It's like, whoa, who's riding that horse? We don't understand. We think, how can this have happened to me? As though our minds were somewhere else or someone else. And then, we go through a period where we can't control our emotions. Our emotions are just very weepy and sad, and we're very unhappy and miserable. And, whoa, where did that come from? Who's riding that horse? And then we find that we've lost all sense of mindfulness and continuity. And it's like we find ourselves, I think the last time I was with you guys, we talked about oil on the water. We find ourselves in an oil slick way down the coast. And we wonder, how in the world did that happen? It's amazing how eternally surprised, and I must say entertained we are by ourselves. And yet, in the years that we've been practicing Dharma, we're still looking outward for something that answers our questions, not taking into account our own causes that we are creating constantly, and still wondering when it's going to happen. When's Dharma going to be helpful to me? Who's riding that horse, I wonder? So our own habitual tendency is like that. We have cause and result, and cause and result is always ripening, and sometimes it ripens real quickly. Sometimes it ripens, further apart. Sometimes it's real subtle. And if we're sleepwalking, like many of us do through most of our lives, you may not notice. Or if we are just not being, we're not being very sensitive and looking inward, we may not notice that either. Or if we're in dull mode, sort of like that, we don't notice. And then there are other times, fortunately, when we can notice. What is it about this karmic fabric, and how does it work? Well, the Buddhas have taught that cause and effect arise interdependently and simultaneously. That means that if cause arises, then at that very point, you can say time, you can say space, it doesn't matter. What you do know is that at that very point, effect is arising also. Cause and effect, two legs, two eyes. You cannot separate cause and effect. They arise interdependently as whole. So while we may not see what we have given rise to, it's definitely occurring. The causes are already there, and so the setup already begins for some result in the future. What happens during a time of degeneration? It's like, try to imagine that cause and result knitting as like a fabric. Think of it as a fabric, like a tapestry. Warp and woof. Do any of you know about weaving or sewing? Warp and woof of fabric. Kind of coming together, knitting together like that. So in ordinary times that, in times when Dharma is expansive and when times are expansive, that's there. And in times of degeneration, it's the same reality except for one thing. It's like the inflammation of the times acts as hot water, boiling water, and takes the fabric, imagine if it were wool, let's say, shrinks it down. So you have the same warp, the same woof, you have the same fabric interdependently, but it's crunched up, very crunched up. And so, on the one hand, warp and woof, these threads that may have been further apart and looser, and there might have been lots of time and space in the middle, are brought together. And through the hot inflammation of these degenerate times, ripening occurs much more quickly and much more hotly. That inflammation is a condition that occurs in our minds, occurs in our perception, and since we are collective as well as individual, it occurs everywhere. The actual fabric of what we perceive as time and space, through the inflammation and degeneration of these times, the wildness of these times, very hot, distorted, and brought together. So that bodes both ill, meaning bad, or well, meaning good. What's bad about it is that at this point now, the way the dynamic of our perception and therefore our lives occurs is that ripenings are occurring all over the place. It seems to me now that when you look around, not only at your own life, but you look around at the life of world leaders and people that are prominent in one way or another, everybody's getting caught with their pants down, kind of. You know? Not too many people are getting away with very much. The worm is turning. It seemed to me that people were getting away with a lot. Individually, collectively, nationally, as a world population. It seemed like a lot of harm was being done, but there was not much attention paid to it, or it seemed to me that not such a big deal was made. But suddenly the worm has turned, and boy, oh boy, it's hard to get away with much of anything right now. I see that in the people I know. For the people that I know who have let their dharma ride, kind of let it be loose and floppy, not attended well to their practice, not really gotten with it. It's in their face now. It's all in your face now, and there's no way to get away from it except to do well. And if we haven't made that decision yet, we're still flopping around, still with our pants down, which for ordained is not seemly. So we're still running around with our pants down. For some of us, we're beginning to say, whoa, maybe I can't really get away with what I used to get away with. I'm not sure why it is, but something's changing. Oh, hooray for you. I'm so proud. That's a great first step. And for some of us, for the lucky few of us who have really put ourselves through the paces that our teachers have given to us, have tried to accomplish the Dharma that our teachers have given us, not our own brand, not our own little Play-Doh brand, but what we've been taught. Maybe we're seeing a little result. Or maybe the result feels closer. Or maybe we're beginning to get a sense of advancing maturity or dignity. Or a sense of Vajra pride. That, wow, after all these years, what I'm the happiest about is that I do my practice every day. After all these years, and all the grasping and all the craziness we put ourselves through, it's my heart practice and my guru that is the love in my life. Floats my boat, makes me happy, heals me, makes the world a better place. Boy, if you're at that happy moment, that's great. If you're at that happy moment, let me know, because I want you to teach somebody. But I don't know that any of us have really come to that place yet. It's certainly available. It's certainly here. We should ask ourselves, how long? Well, for the ordained, the question is simple. How long have you had your robes? Some of you have had your robes for a good long time. And some of you are newer. Those of you that have worn your robes for a while should be asking yourself, how far have I come? Do I really understand the heart of Dharma? Do I truly live a meritorious life, full of compassion? Do I give compassion to others? Do I care for others? Have I reined in my poisons? Because before you do anything fancy on the path, that is the first teaching you get, and until you achieve enlightenment, it is the last teaching you get. That your main job on this path is to diminish the poisons in your mind. Like judgment, that constant judging each other. Saying, oh, look how bad he's doing, how bad she's doing, how bad they're doing. And never, ever, ever looking at the mirror. And noticing that you wouldn't even be thinking like that if there weren't a problem in the mirror. And then we ask ourselves, well, have I diminished pride? Well, here's a test. When's the last time you learned anything from anybody? That's a good test of pride. It's easy to recite like a parrot the things that your teacher said. You can repeat them back, or at least one of the Buddha's disciples was able to do that. Now we have tapes. But have I been able to listen, for instance, to an elder, monk, or nun who has more experience on the path than me? Have I been able to listen even harder to a younger monk or nun who might know more than me, even though I might be the elder? Have I been able to listen to a lowly lay person? Or a kid? Look at those three. Why would you listen to them? Tara's in the other seat. See? You can see her right there. That would be 4. So we have the opportunity to ask ourselves, are we wearing our robes with good qualities and humility? Do we attend to the door of liberation? Do we say to the Guru every day, following you, I will practice? Following you. I'm on a hopeless journey of trying to embody my Guru's good qualities. Pfft, good luck. He is so pure. But I'm trying. So that's one way we can find out whether pride is still the main guru in our hearts. And after 18 years, don't you think that's sad? Or after however long we've had the robes. I shouldn't pick on you guys the whole time. I'll go over here for a while. Some of you have been my students for a very long time. And you have the same issues. Some of you have gone to a certain level of practice where you do wear certain robes, and you wear a white zan maybe, or a red zan, or whatever. And sometimes we wear them because we feel like being a Buddhist that day, and sometimes we don't because we feel like being dressed that day. We have all kinds of silly ideas. But the main central idea that we're actually supposed to abandon samsara, meaning the poisons in our mind, and give rise to the bodhicitta, meaning to awaken, this we have forgotten. That's what we let go of. That's actually the central theme, but it seems we've managed not to master the central theme, which is like trying to build a house without supports. Support beams. How is that going to work out? I have to go back to you guys. I'm sorry. You're just so there for me. And what about if you've been ordained for a very long time and you examine yourself if you were to look at the mirror of truth and honesty and humility and look at yourself and your practice and your mind, and you've discovered that you don't even have a clue how to follow the Vinaya, the most important code of honor, the true code of behavior that Lord Buddha gave to us, not as punishment, but as method, to guide us, to keep us safe. The simplest things, we think they don't apply to us, like maybe it's okay for a monk to live in the same house with a lay woman. Since when? Maybe it's okay to watch TV all day and read romance novels. Since when? Maybe it's okay if you don't practice. Since when? Maybe it's okay if you judge your Vajra brother or sister. Maybe it's okay if you have qualities that they put dogs down for. Maybe it's okay if you make up your own religion. Maybe nothing the Buddha taught was worth anything. Is that what you think? Because if you don't think that, you should be aware of the Vinaya and you should be following it. That is the method. Well, lay people have their code of honor as well. Most importantly, we have the vow of the Bodhisattva that we have taken. Vows of refuge. When we take vows of refuge, we are promising to recognize the difference between liberation and samsara. We are promising to take refuge in that which is extraordinary, in the way that the Buddha is extraordinary, in the way that the Guru is extraordinary, in the way that the teachings are extraordinary, and even in the way that the Buddhist community is extraordinary, in that it is supposed to bond together like blood brothers and sisters under one roof, to be of benefit, to have one common goal, like a great noble family that joins together to bring about the end of suffering for all beings. That's refuge. That's taking refuge. To learn what to take up and what to abandon. We take up those things that enhance our good qualities, that help us to become better human beings, that lead us to understand how to give rise to the end of suffering, that lead us to understand how to help others. But if, in so many years we have the same problems that we had in the beginning, what do you think is happening there? Maybe we haven't taken our refuge vows seriously. Maybe we haven't understood them. Maybe we don't give a damn. All of those options should be put on the table. And we should examine ourselves honestly and thoroughly. And it's not your job to examine somebody else. That can never be. Because that examination points one back to oneself. There's only one way you can see another person's faults, And if they hook in with your own, you'll see them. And what about the precious Bodhisattva vow? Well, what about it? Do you feel that you have really moved closer to accomplishing that every day? I can't remember. I'm not good at this kind of thing, remembering names, and I really apologize. But I know that there was a great Lama that once said, to keep the vows of the Vinaya every day, these are pretty, this is kind of cut and dry. It's not so hard. But to keep the Bodhisattva vow even for 1 hour is so difficult. And I believe that. I know that that is true. I know that that is a true perspective. What does that mean? Does that mean you take the Bodhisattva vow and you let it go because it's impossible? No, it means that you have to practice that kind of mindfulness moment by moment. We think that what makes us a great practitioner is a practice that we do one day, or a retreat that we do 1 year, or a series of empowerments that we receive at one certain time, or maybe the name of the guru that we follow. We think that's what makes us great at practicing the Bodhisattva vow. We think crazy thoughts. We're like insane. But really, what is the essence of the Bodhisattva vow is to make decisions moment by